So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series, we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across the industry, covering a wide range of topics from skills and careers through to technical overviews and soft skills. So, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. Really does mean a lot. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, like, or subscribe to the channel. That would be hugely appreciated. Okay, so my next guest really doesn't need much of an introduction. He's a principal FastTrack engineer working at Microsoft right now. And if you've done any sort of online Azure learning over the last few years, then I would be surprised if you've not come across him. And his awesome Azure Academy videos, of course. So, based out of Pennsylvania, USA, I'm excited to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With as Mr. Dean Cefola. Hello, Mr. Cefola. Thanks so much for joining me. How you doing?
Doing well. How about you, Johnny?
Yeah, all good, all good. We've got a storm in the UK at the moment, so I'm happy I'm sat inside. That's all I'll say right now. But look, Dean, it's super brilliant, really, to have you on the show. You know, you're one of those guys in the community doing some absolutely fantastic stuff at the moment in and around Azure. It's a privilege to have you on and say hello for the first time. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely pleasure to be here in the conversation. And I've seen probably about 4 or 5 of these in the last couple months, and looking forward to having just a nice chat with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I've given you a little bit of an intro, but let's kick things off. I don't know if you want to expand on your introduction a little bit more, and I don't know, maybe tell us a little bit about your career history to how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. So I first started off in the computer industry in help desk, just like a lot of people. Worked my way up from there to clients and devices. Started some basic scripting stuff at that point, and then eventually decided I wanted to really go hard on IT and join the data center side of things. And then from there, it was work my way up. Eventually, private cloud became a thing, became a system center guy, and then Microsoft headhunted me, and I joined as a consultant in the MCS world for System Center, configuration manager, orchestrator, virtual machine manager. And then this thing called Azure happened. And back then it was Azure Classic, what we call it today, all PowerShell based. And I was very comfortable in that because it was all PowerShell. But then a couple of years later, they made the switch to the current Azure platform, which is ARM based, Azure Resource Manager. And then I became completely lost. And I didn't know at all what this thing called JSON was. Is this like another language like PowerShell? I didn't understand that at all. Didn't understand how they rejiggered all of the resources. So it took me probably about 6 months of brutal, down and dirty learning to figure out where everything was and how it all worked to get myself as comfortable as I was in the classic world. And I felt that that experience was rather terrible, and didn't want somebody else to go through that. So I started working with people and setting up user groups to help people make that transition like I did, just a little bit easier. And then eventually I found that I was having the same conversations with people over and over because the basics of networking is the basics of networking. And then I thought, this is a really terrible use of my time. I should probably video this. And then when someone wants to start, we'll say, okay, let's talk about networking or governance or whatever you want. Watch this video. And then after that, we'll meet and talk, and I'll help you through things. And then I thought, well, I need somewhere to put these videos. And YouTube is the biggest platform that there is for this kind of thing. And that's how the Azure Academy was born.
It's pretty cool, Dean. It's like we were just saying there before we hit record here now, is that, certainly over the last 3 or 4 years, you are absolutely one of those characters with a YouTube channel that is doing absolutely some fantastic, brilliant content.
Thank you.
Like you say, to help people understand those core concepts. I mean, how did you, what was your first video experience like, in terms of what kind of things did you have to learn? Was it a new learning experience for you?
Oh, absolutely. recording videos is not even at all like just having a conversation like we are. It requires a lot of thinking, planning. What's the topic I want to cover? How do I box everything that I'm saying to that topic? How do you time box the whole thing? Then we could get into how do you plan and record? Do you write out a whole script? Do you do bullet points? And I've done both of them. These days, I pretty much write out absolutely everything I'm going to say and stick it in my teleprompter so that I know what I'm going to be saying. That way, the editing side is easier. And I had to learn how to do all of this. I didn't come from a background with any of this stuff, so I had to learn what lights are and cameras and how do they work and how do you do things in Adobe Premiere, and I use all the Adobe software. So I've had to teach myself, Illustrator, Photoshop, After Effects, and Premiere to do all the editing. So it has been a big journey, but it becomes a tremendous amount of fun because it's just a different side of technology, and technology is something that I love quite a bit, and it's very much matured. So when I first started my videos, you could just see I'm recording the computer screen and talking into a very terrible microphone. And then eventually I got a really good microphone, which was a Blue Yeti. And that's a great beginner to mid-level microphone that's not too expensive. And it just sounds really, really nice. And then I decided eventually that, it'd be nice if people actually knew I was doing the Azure Academy, because I never appeared on camera. And I wanted to people associate me more with the brand of the Azure Academy, and the channel was growing pretty well. It was about 15,000 subscribers at that point. And so I just started to figure out now, how do I get me into the world? And you have some other people on YouTube who have amazing channels, like John Saville is someone who I've followed for quite a while. Actually, funny story. Before I started my YouTube channel, I happened to be in Dallas working with a customer, and John was there at the Microsoft MTC, and we got together and discussed how in the world I would start the Azure Academy as a YouTube channel and really go for it. So John's style is he has that beautiful Surface whiteboard and he draws on things, and I just cannot draw to save my life. So
no, I hear you. Yeah.
So I thought, how can I appear on screen? And I didn't want to show my office, which, I mean, this is my new house, so everything's not quite set up here yet. But it's still not a very tech centric kind of, how do I tell a story with this? Sure. So then I thought, why not green screen myself and put myself in the computer? And since everything's already in the cloud, so then I had to get green screen software and cut myself out. And that was a whole nother thing to learn. And that's not really perfect because it creates a lot of glitching around you, or what we call artifacts, that every time you move and there's something behind you with lights, then that's going to bleed through and create glitches. So a part of my move to a new house is I built myself a studio. So now I've got a proper physical green screen setup with proper lighting and a nice high-end camera and microphones, so that I can create better videos. And then that's where all the animation stuff comes in, and all the After Effects, and you can use the icons of Azure to tell the story that I can't draw myself. So that's all kind of how we got to where we are.
Well, no, I mean, it's a fantastic story. And, part of, having this chat with you now was to kind of dig into some of that in a little bit of detail, because you mentioned there about, for people in the community now that maybe, look, the last 2 years have been certainly a journey for a lot of people because of COVID, and certainly the use of video conference or video equipment, lights, we've all kind of dolled up our home offices because we've kind of been working from home. So I think a lot more people are used to kind of putting these investments, not just of cost and buying kit, but actually they're learning some of this tech for themselves now. So it's great because you see a lot more people trying to produce videos and things like that. So you mentioned your early videos, as you say, you were kind of staring, looking at the screen. Have you got kind of any hints and tips for people looking to start out on that journey for themselves? Should they rush off and go and buy all this fancy kit? I know one person that might have done that. Sorry, but there's got to be a better way, hey Dean?
Yeah. So the most important thing in creating a video is engaging with the audience. And you can do that in a lot of ways. The most important thing, regardless of all of the fancy cameras and animation and all that, the absolutely world's most important piece of kit is a very good microphone. Because if they can't hear you and comprehend what you're saying in a very good, clear, concise way, then they're not going to be engaged and they're not going to learn. The visuals can just be a computer screen. The visuals could just be you there as a talking head. As long as you are communicating clearly and engaging to the audience, people will follow. And I've seen a lot of YouTube channels where it is nothing more than a person sitting here just staring into the camera and communicating with the audience, and the audience loves it, and they've hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and as they just communicate with people. That's the biggest key in creating video content of any kind.
And do you find that there's kind of like a trend in the different types of content that you create? Do you find that, certain content does really well over certain content that may not work so well? How do you kind of, have you got any hints and tips around that?
That's an excellent question. I wish I knew. Some content, like here's a good, for instance. I had people had to be for months who were throwing me hundreds of comments about create a series on DevOps. And eventually I said, okay, fine, I'll create some DevOps stuff. So I created 2 DevOps videos, and I thought, this is a perfect opportunity for me to do some of the new camera things that I've been learning about. And so I created my dev version and my ops version. And so I had 2 of me on screen arguing about how to do things and then going back and forth. And they turned out to be like my 2 least watched videos.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can't understand why, if there was such a demand for it, and the principles of DevOps certainly can be helpful to everyone, because that, it becomes such a buzzword that everyone should be doing DevOps. Well, what exactly does that mean? And how do they work together? And it's not all just about making developers happy, and it's not just about operations. It's a team effort. And the videos perform absolutely terribly. And then I put out another video on a topic that I thought, I like this, but it's not really going to be that interesting to people. And then it blows up with 10,000 views in a day. Yeah.
So there's no rhyme or reason, is what you're saying. It's just your audience at the time and which way the wind is blowing, then, I guess. Yeah,
that's part of it. The other side is the nasty world of the YouTube algorithm, and sure. YouTube's purpose, for anybody who doesn't know, is to get you on YouTube and watching from now until the end of time. Never stop watching videos. That's their purpose. Anytime you stop, that means that you didn't like what you were watching. Okay, now take that into the technical training scenarios that we deal with. Yeah. I've created the perfect video on subject whatever. You watch that video from beginning to end. You're really happy. And then later, you come back to that video because how did that part work in that section? And then you go to that spot, find exactly what you needed, and then you left the video really happy. But because you didn't watch the whole thing from beginning to end and then go watch another video after that, YouTube says that you hated the video. So they don't promote it as much. So the technical challenge that we have in creating content, and you have the same thing with like a plumber, if you're doing something with fixing the toilet, and then you have, do this thing with this pipe over here, and I've fixed that and solved that. But what was the part with the flapper, and how do you do that again? Yeah. Now YouTube thinks that you hate the video because you didn't watch the whole thing. So that's a real problem in the YouTube world, why they don't promote content like this more, because you didn't stay, and that's what YouTube is going for, because that drives all of their ad dollars.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Dean. I suppose, like you say, for this industry where, certainly your style of content absolutely is that style where you'd watch it from start to finish. And yeah, you might go back, right, what did Dean say about that? And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's a shame in a way, I guess, isn't it? Yeah. It's that people like yourself, and certainly, obviously, I noticed John Savile's recently hit that 100,000 subscriber mark, which is cool.
Yep.
Look, it's cool to see.
He beat me to it.
Well, what are you at now? You can't be that far behind there
Oh
now,
no,
though, Dean, eh?
unfortunately I am. Yeah, I'm about 38,000. But of course, John's had his
Well,
channel for about 12 years, so I think it's only fair.
yeah. Well, exactly. Look, you wait your turn to it, then get that plaque, I suppose, eh? But look, Dean, I mean, in terms of the content that you put up on the Azure Academy channel, I'm assuming it kind of ties in very much with your day job as a fast track engineer. I mean, no,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, how do you kind of find the time to mix kind of? Because look, I do videos. I know how long they can take to get sorted. How do you find that time? Have you got an agreement? Is it a case of you just get on with it in your own time?
So I generally sleep about 4 hours a day,
Okay.
and that creates a lot of free time. um, yeah. So my typical, anybody's typical day job is approximately 40 hours, 50 hours. At Microsoft, it's somewhere in the 50 to 60 hours type of range by the time you figure out how to do your day job and then how to learn about doing your job. And then I have, my family, and then you have this. This is my hobby. I don't go and watch sports and go to the games and all that stuff. This is what I do for fun, and it's also fun to be able to help everybody out. Um, and I've always loved technology. So for me, if it wasn't creating videos, it'd be building my own, custom gaming rigs or stuff
Mm,
like that. So this is what I do. Um, and in creating my content, none of it happens under the official banner of Microsoft. I,
sure.
I tried going that way for a while, and each group in Microsoft has their own way of doing things a lot of times. So
Hmm.
they don't necessarily all talk to each other or all work together and have a single unified Microsoft video strategy. I think that'd be kind of good, but it's also kind of good that they don't in other ways, because then it gives people individually more freedom.
Yeah.
And um, so at the same time, I have to do this on my own time. And so each video for me, mm, depends on how much animation there is, but it's anywhere from 6 to 10 hours to create a 15-minute
Sure.
video.
Oh, I can
So
imagine. Yeah, yeah, and I suppose for those watching, there's probably people out there that don't realise the amount of time and effort that does go into these videos. So, I suppose the one thing that I've been very aware of is kind of, helping content creators like yourself sharing that content out, because if everybody could do that, it would help you guys that work in your spare time to create this content that helps so many people to increase and grow and do more of that stuff. So I think that's a word to get out there into the community, help and share it around a bit more, I suppose.
yeah, we should start some donations while we're at it, so I could just do this full time.
Well, there are things like that out there, and of course, I don't know how much YouTube pays for subscriptions, but I can't imagine you're going to be giving up your day job anytime soon.
Yeah, probably not this week.
So, I mean, in terms of the technical side of your job, obviously you're a fast track engineer
Hmm.
working at Microsoft at the moment. You mentioned kind of in your earlier career, you were in the System Center family of products, I guess it's fair to say. I notice you've done a lot with AVD as of late. You've done a whole series on Azure Virtual Desktop, and it's been a great
Yeah.
series. Are you where are you moving into now, Dean? In terms of that, are you still very much in that space? Have you got any other areas of Azure that you're looking to move into?
Yeah, so as far as my day job goes, in FastTrack, which is an engineering-led program where we work with customers to say, okay, you want to do what in the cloud, and then we help you understand how to do that, best practices, help you out with getting things deployed, and then see what else you're doing, and will any of those other things be good, suitable things for the cloud. In that area, I'm kind of an Azure generalist. So I would do anything from identity to governance, networking, compute, infrastructure, platform services. And so all of that kind of umbrellas under a lot of what Azure Virtual Desktop does. So that's where I
Hmm.
spend a lot of my daytime. So doing migrations, working with customers to build new solutions in the cloud, and then AVD. And so I have a pretty good relationship with the AVD product team. I actually knew those folks from way back when, because one of the things that I did after I got really good in the ARM way of doing Azure is I was in the consulting area, and I helped to develop a solution that was called the Hybrid Cloud Foundation. And I wrote a series of ARM templates that would be able to deploy an entire solution for a customer at the end of the engagement, all very standardized. And one of the things that I had plugged into there was something that hadn't yet really been done in the cloud, and that was bring a full RDS install into Azure in through automation. So I worked with that team quite a bit to get that developed. Then RDS in the cloud became this thing that never really happened, but was the precursor to Azure Virtual Desktop, called Remote Desktop Modern Infrastructure. And it was the first flavor of doing kind of RDS in the cloud as a service. And then Azure Virtual Desktop, or technically Windows Virtual Desktop, happened, and then later renamed to Azure Virtual Desktop. And so I got to know those folks quite a bit and had a good relationship with them. So as the product was getting towards its time to be released internally, I knew that this was happening, and I knew that our team in the FastTrack world needed to be a part of this because it was going to be humongous. So I got the okay from my leadership in FastTrack to do a couple engagements, and then they turned out to be even bigger than I could have imagined. And so then they started throwing people at me and saying, okay, what do we need to make this happen? And so then I started leading that group in FastTrack. And then after all of that, then COVID happened. And that, of course, made everything just explode to the nth degree in Virtual Desktop. And so then working with the product team, because that's the other side of what we do in FastTrack, is get feedback from the customers and then work with the product team to take that feedback and help create new solutions. And so in working with the product team, that then led me to the thought of, there's a lot of people who need Virtual Desktop, need to know how it works, and there's all these new features that are coming out. I can create a lot of video material on this and just help people everywhere to adopt it. So that was what I did. And so I continue to work with that product team, which has branched me into working with other product teams. And so at this point, the what am I going to create next is half of what are the new and interesting things I see coming out of the Azure product line, as well as what do I see in the community as interest. And also I take feedback from people. So some things are done by request. People just write in a comment and say, I want you to make a video about this. And if I think that's enough of a solution that can apply to a lot of people, then I'll go ahead and create a video on that.
No, it's really awesome to see as well. It really is. So, I mean, you touched on the topic of community then, Dean. So, I mean, I've noticed you've been involved with a fair few community user groups and sessions over the last couple of years yourself. What are your thoughts on community in general? Because, you know, clearly you're doing this content to help others learn. So you are playing a huge part yourself. What are your thoughts? Any hints and tips to those kind of around the edges looking in at the moment?
I think that I don't know if you can hear my dogs.
Yeah, it all adds to the effect, Dean. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so as far as community goes, I think that one of the things about it is that it is people helping people. And so how much you want to help others, I think is half of what community is about. The other side of what community is about is opportunities to learn. So if you take any one of the dozens of virtual desktop user groups, for example, those are localized groups where people can go and see what's going on in that area as well as other areas. I've been in groups that were in Denmark, in India, in the US, and they're just good sessions to sit in on and see what other people are facing and dealing with, because sometimes that drives my content and what I should create something on. For example, I have 2 deep dive videos on FS Logics that came out of being in some of those user group sessions and people saying, well, how does this work? And why are there user profiles and office profiles? And how do I make them work together? And should I? And I thought, well, that's an interesting question. Let's explore that. So that kind of feeds back into itself. But I think that the anytime that you can be involved and learning, as someone who wants to learn of anything that people are willing to do and offer into the community, that's all just free material. So why not? And then you should, if you can, and have the skills, have the time, give back to that community who has also helped you. And things like just conversations like this and bringing in other people from different parts of the world to talk about what they're doing in their own space not only introduces me to basically a new cloud family, hashtag cloud family, or
Absolutely.
also lets them know what I'm doing and lets me know what you're doing. And then we can all build an even better community, and who knows where that will lead. I mean, that's basically how the internet started.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things, isn't it? I think with community, even for myself, when I first kind of dipped my toe, I was very aware of community for a long, long time. I'm of an age that I've been involved in this industry for long enough now and to have seen community, but I never really got it myself. But then as soon as you start actually interacting with all the fantastic people in the community, it's kind of, I don't know about you, Dean, but it seems to pay off in dividends, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's like you grow in so many ways that you probably didn't even realize that you could grow in those ways, just the networking, the friendships, the camaraderie, the fun and the banter, as well as that technical knowledge that you're kind of helping to kind of shape into the future.
Yeah, and like we were talking even off camera, that there's nothing cooler than finding someone who you knew online at a conference somewhere, and then you get to sit down and have a nice chat, and that's great. And then you can tell them how much they've helped you and meant to you, and it's great as a person who's heard that kind of comment before, because that just encourages you to keep going, because most of this stuff, you're just giving of your own free time to help everyone else out. So it's always nice to hear the feedback.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think from somebody across the pond from you, Dean, certainly the Azure Academy is, as somebody that works in Azure, I've watched too many of your videos, I think it's probably fair to say. So it is great, so it's you're doing a good thing in the community when you kind of, it's like I've not got an ego to say I don't need to watch videos. We all need to learn. We all need to start on a new technology, and when you've got people putting this together out the goodness of their hearts, it's like, wow, and it's top quality content at the end of the day. It kind of gets to the point and it gets you up and running quickly, which for me is actually what I'm looking for, kind of to help paint that picture, I guess, and then, absolutely back it off to Microsoft Docs and go and read the deep dive technical bits and pieces if you need to. But yeah, okay. So, look, it's great to finally catch up with you in that history of your career, into how you started with Azure Academy, into what you're doing today with Microsoft as a FastTrack engineer. There's always one area that I like to talk about around with my guests on this show, is really to try and that big open-ended question, Dean. Why are we kind of here doing all of this learning today? What do you think are the next big bets in technology from your perspective?
Wow. That is a big question. So there is a lot of talk going on, of course, about the whole concept of the metaverse. And I think that's rather interesting, because I don't know if you saw the film Ready Player One, but I thought, boy, that looks really great, and kind of an interesting view of the future. And then you look at other movies like Wall-E, where everyone ends up sitting in chairs and they become, blobs who can't move around on their own. So I think the truth is kind of somewhere in between. We'll end up with a very interactive kind of environment sooner rather than later, probably the next 5 to 10 years. And what is that going to look like? Don't know exactly. I think it's going to be a multi ecosystem or multi-partnered ecosystem, where we have devices and software and environment creators all coming together. And I think that'll be kind of cool, because I love that kind of stuff. I'd prefer to get on a meeting and have some way to be more interactive than this. I mean, this is great, but I'd love to go step closer somehow, rather than jump on a plane for the next 8 hours and fly across the pond, and then we can sit down and have a chat, and you have to go through security checkpoints and all the rest. So I think that this is faster. I think it can bring everyone together, and I think that's a hopeful view of where the technology can go. How does that affect us on a consumer level versus a business level, which are most of the time very different. I think that a lot of the innovation in this stuff happens corporately and then it trickles down to the consumers. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you take like a product like the HoloLens.
Yeah.
Microsoft created it a long time ago. Then there was HoloLens 2. Is it ever going to be a commercial product? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Then you have other things like I just bought not too long ago a Quest 2 VR headset.
Yeah.
Very cool technology. Is VR ready to be Ready Player One? No, not by a long shot. Can it be eventually? Maybe. You need a lot more sensors and haptic feedback and all that to make that happen, which I think would be super cool. As far as the cloud goes, you know, I've read some reports out there that were like something in the neighborhood of the next 10 years of good, solid infrastructure development going to happen in the cloud on the IaaS side of making things happen. But things are even now moving very much toward the platform side and the SaaS side of things. And I like that particular innovation because anything that breaks down to smaller and smaller compute units means that everything gets into more micro billing. So I don't need to have this whole VM running all month long in order to just run month-end processing, but I could do it with containers or function apps. And I think that's a different way of computing. I think that is kind of cool. It's sort of sad to me as an infrastructure person to see eventually the end of infrastructure, but you know, it'll just change to something else. But that means you just have to learn new stuff and keep being a learner. So there's nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely. I like your style as well, Dean. I think the certainly looking at Meta and you know what metaverse, or I say Meta, and it's not necessarily just Facebook Meta. It's it's this whole AR VR thing that's been going around for a little bit of time now, and it's starting to. I think we're starting to see it. I think Microsoft are releasing something now into Teams to be able to have that kind that mesh that experience in that kind of VR world, and you know have your avatar sat there in a meeting, and you can have your camera switch off, which I think is pretty cool. You know, just that in itself, like you say, you don't necessarily have to be wearing a VR headset, but kind of adds to the experience, I guess. So, do you know what? I mean, literally, just before we were on the call, I was on my Amazon account. I've been saying for so long now I'm going to go and buy myself one of those Quest 2 headsets to start playing with it a bit more. And I was literally on there about to click buy now. So yeah, watch this space soon. We'll do some cool. But yeah, I think you're right, Dean. I think the whole way things are going, it seems to be that way, doesn't it? I think. I mean, you know, one last question: which cloud is going to be powering that? Do we think? You know, which cloud is it? Where we?
Not too sure. So, in all honesty, I think that all of them have their own strength areas that they offer stuff. And of course, I favor Azure, but I have used the other two major cloud providers as well. And I think that the cloud that you can use is probably the best one for you to start with today, and then learn Azure by watching the Azure Academy. So.
I joke, of course. You know, at the end of the day, you're absolutely right, though. I mean, I think it's just one of those things to kind of, I don't know, like you say, we're all learners. We're all learning technology at such a fast rate today that I think it's probably fair to say I certainly don't know of a time where we've almost had to be expected to stay on top of our game quite as much as we are today.
Yeah.
And look, I think it's fine to say we dropped the ball and we don't know everything today. You know, it's one of these just this is the way things are right now. So I think it's important for people to realize that as well. That it's
and I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, I mean, as I said, I consider myself an Azure generalist. You know, I always introduce myself when I'm talking to a customer as this is my name and this is my job in Microsoft, and I either know the answer to your question or I know the person who does. So feel free to ask me anything. And that's kind of the way it is. You know, I don't have to learn everything, although that'd be nice, but there's just not enough brain cycles or hours in the day to do it. So I've got a whole other team of people who I work with who are amazing, and they do know the answers that I don't. So I think that helps, and that's part of what community is about.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it kind of puts it to a succinct point. There is just, everybody, the way that you put your content out there is in a fun and an engaging way to kind of
Thank you.
draw people in to learn these new technologies. So, Dean, please do carry on doing what you're doing because it's absolutely brilliant and helping so many people out in ways that you probably don't even see or realize, I'm sure. But yeah, certainly from my point of view, keep doing what you're doing, Dean. It's fantastic. So,
Yeah, and you keep it up too. Conversations like this are what make the cloud go round.
well, hopefully we'll. I'm just like I said before. I'm looking forward to attending an in-person event at some point where we can catch up and say hello properly. Because I feel like
Absolutely.
it's weird, isn't it, when people say I feel like I know you, Dean, but you don't. You've never spoken before. It's such a strange world we live in right now. But
Yeah.
Dean, all it leaves me to say really is thank you for being such an awesome guest. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for giving up your time and being on with me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and happy learning to everyone.
Thanks a lot, Dean. See you all soon.